principals and the teachers can be like, okay, this is what I can see, this is what's happening, this is where we need to do better?
I think the education department would tell you a little bit of both, right? The idea is that this can be used by, parents and students to understand, how your school that, you might be zoned for compares to other schools in the area and the state. But I think that a lot of those metrics are going to be really used for the state and the individual schools and the district level to sort of understand, where do we need to improve in order to, better improve our scores.
I never like that.
So I think there's a little bit of both, and we'll see. This is the first time we'll have these ratings, so I think, it's something that we'll see how it gets used and whether or not, this is something that's constructive for folks.
We mentioned that the data show racial and socioeconomic gaps. What are they? How significant are those disparities?
I had done a similar analysis last year based on projections of how schools were expected to perform, and this matches pretty similarly to that. I don't think that is, particularly surprising. We see these types of disparities across all sorts of different things, in the education sphere. You see it when you look at just words and all kinds of different things, and it goes down, along racial lines, and often also goes down socioeconomic lines, and often even regional lines, different areas of the city. I don't think any of that was, particularly surprising, but I think it is just something that's important to understand when we're looking at data. Who's actually in these schools, and what are sort of the breakdowns and how much can we understand them.
Now, let's look at the top stories we're working on at WTOP. And the search is still on after that mass shooting at Brown University in Rhode Island. 2 students killed, 9 injured. A person of interest has been cleared from that investigation. The son of the legendary filmmaker Rob Reiner being held without bail, accused in the stabbing deaths of their parents at their Los Angeles home. Keep it here for details on these stories in the minutes ahead on WTOP.
Traffic and weather on WTOP.
Accident continuing southbound BW Parkway on 197 and out. I'll look outside it for a few minutes. You're looking at 25 in the right lane now as you head down past 197. I expect to see some breakdowns south of 198. You can also use down around 95 and it's all in Bridge. Northbound, your lanes are open, and if you're getting onto the BW Parkway from 197, you get on just south of all that emergency response. Over in Virginia, southbound on I-95, mobile work crew is in the right lane, just south past Morton. Then there's a broken down tractor trailer in the right lane, just south of the Occoquan at 123. I'm going to work on your next traffic appointment day.
Milder temperatures are on the way. It's going to be a slow increase over the coming days. Moving into this afternoon, upper 30s to lower 40s, a big difference compared to yesterday when we didn't even hit 30 degrees. Tomorrow, partly to mostly cloudy skies, upper 40s to middle 50s. Thursday, ahead of a cold front, we're in the 50s. That cold front will bring wet weather chances late Thursday night into early Friday. Temperatures fall from the 50s to the 40s on Friday, just around 40 on Saturday, back to around 50 by Sunday. I'm 7 News meteorologist Steve Rubin, the First Alert Weather Center.
Brought to you by Better Helmets. Prevent costly winter damage with their Clear the Hall sale. 20% off and pay nothing for 1 year. 888-5-HELMET.
I'm Shanola Hampton. Every day, millions of people face hunger. Today, I will share with you some of their experiences. I'm stuck between paying for medications or paying for food. John from Maine. After paying my bills, I can buy groceries. It's sad to say, food comes last. Alice from Oregon. I thought pantries were for less fortunate people, but anybody could be less fortunate in a day or even a second. Claire from Virginia. The Feeding America network of food banks helps provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. No one should have to worry where their next meal will come from. Together, we can end hunger. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Listening to WTOP.
WTOP News.
News happens here.
President Trump has filed a defamation lawsuit against the BBC, accusing the broadcaster of editing his January 6th speech to suggest he urged supporters to storm the U.S. Capitol. The president is seeking $5 billion for each of the lawsuits, 2 counts. The BBC has admitted the edit was a mistake and apologized, but insists there's no legal basis for the claim. The controversy triggered a crisis at the BBC and the resignation of some top officials. The video is tied to the BBC's Panorama documentary, which aired before the 2024 elections. Trump's lawyers say the edits caused him severe reputational harm. The FBI says it disrupted a plot to set off bombs this coming New Year's Eve at a number of sites in Southern California. 4 people are now in custody. The suspects are being described as belonging to an extremist group.
The group appears to be an anti-government extremist organization and self-proclaimed radicals who want to take down capitalism. The group allegedly was preparing to set bombs off in backpacks near 5 major business distribution facilities in Orange County and Los Angeles County, California. Federal officials say the terror attack was being timed for New Year's Eve so that the explosions were being masked by traditional fireworks celebrations.
That is CBS News Justice correspondent Scott McFarland. We've been following the growing crisis at the Marylander condominiums there in Prince George's County. About 100 families have been without heat since before Thanksgiving. Now they're being told to leave their homes, but some say they have nowhere else to go. Here's WTOP's Mike Ferrillo with more.
Orange flyers ordered residents to vacate immediately. Been posted on several buildings at the Marylander condominiums after management has vandalism by someone from a nearby homeless encampment took out the heat. County Councilmember Juanita Fisher says they're trying to see how they can help.
The residents are more than happy to call my office. We can assist, try to find alternative housing, try to put them any way that we can.
Other management has been critical of the county and the councilmember's office, saying they're not legal being done about the encampment. Fisher says the county has needed that area several times.
So there's a balance of like we're doing our best to find opportunities to house in the house community, but also like upbuilding us to secure ourselves.
She has the years to defer maintenance by the condo association that made the situation worse.
When you defer movers, this is sort of the impact of that.
Like Morello, WTOP.
Ford is backing off some of its ambitious electric vehicle plans. Here's reporter Jeff Gilbert from WWJ.
Ford expects half the vehicles it sells in 2030 with some electrification. Most of those will be hybrid. One that we got more efficient lightning electric pickup, replacing it with a more hybridized model. We are looking at the market as it is today, not just as everyone predicted it to be 5 years ago. Ford says the big EV plans of Ford is building outside Memphis will all become the Tennessee truck plant and build Jim Gilbert, CBS News.
iRobot has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. A Chinese firm will be taking over for Roomba.
Customers are thrilled after iRobot announced its file for bankruptcy protection. The company and maker of the self-operating vacuum cleaner that took the world by storm says the Chinese firm will take over but don't expect any disruptions to customer Roomba as the transition unfolds. iRobot, the maker of the circular shaped smart vacuum Roomba, has faced growing competition and tariff pressures, leading to layoffs and stock price drops that come nearly 2 years after the merger with Amazon fell through. The company is looking to restructure and will continue moving forward.
There's another live-action spin-off now in the works.
Disney looks to be taking another one of its iconic villains and giving it a live-action spin. As sources tell Deadline, the studio is in early development on a film centered on the Beauty and the Beast character, Gaston. Dave Callahan is writing the script with Michelle Lejeune producing. No director is attached at this time. Disney has already produced a live-action version of the 1992 animated classic in 2017, with Steve Evans playing Gaston. However, with plot details still vague for this version, sources tell Deadline it will be new and original with a new actor. Monica DeLuca, Fox News.
Sports is next.
Sports from WTOP brought to you by Amica, solving for next for the intelligent agreement. NFL Week 15 ended in Pittsburgh with the Steelers' 28-15 victory over the Miami Dolphins to a boost to 8-6 and remain atop the AFC North. Aaron Rodgers had a near-perfect performance, throwing for 224 yards and 2 touchdowns on an 85% completion percentage. Former Dolphin John Smith scored against his former team on a 14-yard tight end run. And the win keeps the Steelers undefeated at home on Monday Night Football since 1991. The Commanders shut down Jaden Daniels for the remaining 3 games of this 2025 season from hell, ending his second season in which he started only 7 out of 14 games because of 3 separate injuries. Dan Quinn explained a lot went into the decision.
Both medical and our team. As of today, he still wasn't all the way clear to play. So last week we had all the results until the end of the week, and then a short week next week with the Christmas game. So we believe this decision allows him to take advantage of the next few weeks in a different way. He wants to practice, and he will practice.
As a result of avoiding injured reserve, Laramie Tunsil dealing with an oblique will see if he can play on the short turnaround to Saturday against the Eagles. Down a level, the most AP first-team All-American came from the Big Ten with an appropriate 10 players selected. In the interior defensive lineman Landon Robinson lead the first-team defense. In the other football, the U.S. men's national team fears the worst after its captain Tyler Adams suffered a knee injury while playing in Premier League. Rob Woodfork, WNKC Sports.
What does life after service look like? Looking back, take it easy. We believe it makes a little difference. Looks like leading to all veterans. Something so hard to keep to certainly able to benefit from that and ensuring every veteran's voice is heard. Looks like advancing to meet today's veterans where they are, lifting them up and strengthening the bond that unites them. Looks like serving when disaster strikes, boots on the ground, helping our communities recover and rebuild. From the capital to our hometown, we don't just show up when it's easy, we show up when it matters. Because the veterans' mission never truly ends, and neither does ours. The VFW, still leading, still advancing, still serving. Get involved at stillserving.org.
It all connects. The girl who walked for hours to bring home the family's water, the school she can't attend most days, the breakfast she didn't have, the rain that hasn't fallen in months, the danger around the next bend, her little brother's belly laughter, her mother's hug, her dreams of being a teacher, an engineer, a mayor. All the reasons life is both so hard and so beautiful. It all connects. But so do we, for children's sake. At Child Fund, we connect through everything we do, together, so every child can grow up healthy, educated, and safe. Because we need each other. Learn more at childfund.org.
Moving past the Angelo Twin, slowly but surely, southbound on the UW Parkway at 197 and Laurel, into the far right as you head through there. There's a lot of flash of light. On the Prince George's County Beltway, the route looks okay. Through Charles over to Landover and down past St. Andrews over towards the river. Wilson Bridge. Bridge repairs going on northbound on 395 as you pass Edson Road and ditch for the steel brake lights through there. Southbound your lanes are open and down on the I-95.
WFED out of Washington, D.C., 1500 kilohertz, a.k.a. WTOP, out of Washington, D.C. You hear the background, you hear the laundry going on. Yeah, I'm up late doing laundry and having a couple of brewskis. Just listen to some AM radio across the East Coast and across the country. So welcome to the live stream.
The skies clear throughout the afternoon. Highs in 40s on 70 along with the first mid-level.
temperatures at 2:30, we dropped to 20.
And using the Kidosin DX286.
Avenue downtown. Germantown is at 16. Annandale is at 24. We are the warmest spot in the area. Chevy Chase, Friendship Heights, 26 degrees here at WTOP.
You're listening to WTOP. News happens here.
The WTOP producer's desk is wired by IBEW Local 26, where electrical contractors come to grow.
2:31. Good morning. I'm Dan Roman. Thanks for joining us. Betty Gelman is our producer this morning. Here are the top stories we are following for you here at WTOP. Police in Rhode Island, they say they are intensifying their search for the gunman who opened fire at Brown University, killing 2 students and injuring 9 others Saturday. They released and cleared someone they were holding as a person of interest on Monday. Investigators have now released new surveillance video. It shows a second person of interest, a masked suspect dressed in black, walking near the campus shortly after the shooting. ABC's Whit Johnson has more from Providence.
Among those killed, Ella Cook, a sophomore from Alabama, remembered as a bright light.
It's going to be a long period of healing and pain going forward for next semester.
And Muhammad Aziz Umarzaka from Uzbekistan. His family riding on GoFundMe. He was incredibly kind, funny, and smart. Our family is incredibly devastated by this loss.
The school is canceling classes and finals for the remainder of the fall semester following Saturday's mass shooting. Australian leaders are moving to tighten gun laws after a mass shooting targeted Jews at a Hanukkah celebration in Sydney, killing at least 15 people, including children. The Prime Minister calls it an act of anti-Semitic terrorism, and he says sweeping changes to the country's already strict firearm laws are now necessary and on the table. This after investigators revealed the suspect legally owned multiple weapons. As that nation mourns, there are questions how it happened. ABC's Anna Corin is there.
Reuben Morrison threw bricks at the gunman and chased after him. His daughter, Shayna Gutnick, calls him a hero.
If there was one way for him to go on this earth, it would be fighting a terrorist. He went down fighting, protecting the people he loved the most.
Morrison was shot and bled out while waiting for help. One of at least 15 people killed during the massacre.
I don't know how to live in a world without him. I don't know how my children will live without him.
Australia's federal police commissioner says the shooting was a terrorist attack inspired by the Islamic State. Turning now to the death of the actor and director Rob Reiner and his wife in California. Their son, 32-year-old Nick, has now been charged. He's being held on without bail on suspicion he killed his parents at their home in Los Angeles.
While police remain tight-lipped, the death set to chills for the film and television industry, reflecting Reiner's enduring legacy. The son of legendary comedian Carl Reiner, his own work ranged from All in the Family to directing films.
Hello, Kathy Miguel, 7886. Yellow. I don't know what yellow. I don't know what yellow. You talking about the hose? This hose? That's from the sump pump. And Anna Anara 6505. Hello. Hello.
President Trump has justified these type of attacks as a necessary escalation to stop the flow of drugs into the U.S.
Hope you're doing well. Hello. Hello.
In an armed conflict against drug cartels. At least 95 people have died.
What's happening? No, I'm just listening to the radio
Turning now to Capitol Hill, Congress.
and doing some laundry. Here's some background music. Background music. Background noise, that's the laundry. That's the washing machine right below. That's all. Yeah. Yeah, she doesn't DX286 right there. There you go. Exactly.
Affordable Care Act subsidy. While Democrats talk about less than 10% of the American people, we have been talking about what we can do to lower health premiums.
So you see the display.
100% of American
WTOP.
Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says Democrats are still trying to find a way to extend the ACA subsidies
so insurance premiums don't soar.
We're all hands on deck to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. The Republican proposals don't extend the ACA tax credits, but seek to lower drug costs and provide funding for cost-sharing plans to help reduce premiums. On Capitol Hill, Mitchell Miller, WTOP News.
Coming up on WTOP after
I'm not gonna review it.
Wall Street, we'll be looking for a critical jobs report on Tuesday. And President Trump offers up a new explanation of why that White House ballroom.
I'll show it anyway. What the hell?
Story 236.
Show it.
The WTOP December
Oh, another moderator.
is Beacon House. For nearly 35 years, Beacon House has
I started watching the live stream like 8 minutes ago. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Washington, D.C.'s Edgewood neighborhood. Beacon House has helped hundreds of children graduate from high school.
Yeah, see, so that's WFED/WTOP from Washington, D.C. There you go.
And it is recognized as a critical nonprofit by
Add a Q&A sticker. No, I don't want to add a Q&A sticker.
Search charity.
There you go. Let me see what else is going on.
All
All right, there you go. Thank you.
WTOP. Many years ago, we began advertising with WTOP. The high quality of their audience matched perfectly with our target customers. It turned out to be a very smart move.
Yeah, it's good on a cold day like
I've
this.
seen success of our partnership, and I can say that
This radio, both.
excellent advertising option if you need lots of high quality.
Both.
At Metropolitan Bath and Tile, we take
But I don't listen to much shortwave. Not a lot of shortwave.
WTOP, they take great pride in
So,
creating marketing
this is medium wave.
that deliver incredible results. So if you're
Right now you listen to medium wave. But
call
the
Metropolitan
shortwave, the problem is with shortwave, there's not much to listen to
to your business, reach out to WTOP.com
in North America.
and search for
So,
Metropolitan Bath and Tile.
and it's getting less and less.
It's all the good.
Of course, you know, you still have China Radio International, but I don't listen to that. Barely listen to that. A lot of stuff in North America is religious or political, which I can listen to that on medium wave. So it's gotten to the point where shortwave listening to me is not as interesting as it was a few years back. Yeah, you have utilities. You have utilities. You have, even weather VOMnets, which are utilities, by the way. So, yeah, this is the TF 6686 chip.
Come down from 198 towards 197 west, and you know the 9 front is going to slow down to just a good look, correct? Up ahead, you should be okay, and as you continue on down the parkway towards the Beltway, outer loop, no worries, through College Park and Silver Spring, 270, and without issue from Gaithersburg and Rockville down towards the lane divide. Virginia Beltway, no trouble spots across the American Bridge through Tyson and downtown Clyde.
The only thing I'm doing right now is just laying in bed, okay.
Southbound on I-95 at 123 and Woodbridge northbound. Your lanes are open as well, but towards the Beltway.
No, I'm a night owl. I stay up.
Now let's get our forecast.
And plus, I napped earlier. I napped for about
His report from the
5 hours, so
Home Improvement Weather Desk for your home's winter.
I'm going to be up for a while.
PJ.com.
Our night temperature
DSP2, I think, better.
59 degrees,
Okay.
that's 20 degrees below normal for this time of year. Today, even though it's going to be chilly, it's not going to be quite as cold, upper 30s to lower 40s. Tonight, mainly clear, mid-20s to lower 30s by early tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, middle of the week, partly to mostly cloudy, 48 to 55 degrees. Well, 50s on Thursday. Those wet weather chances, Thursday night to Friday, all part of a strong cold front. It's going to knock our temperatures down for the first half of the weekend. On 7 we'll all the first look at it.
Germantown 16, Annandale 24, 26 here at WTOP. WTOP News Time, it's 2:40.
DSP2, I think better, medium wave and shortwave both. Okay. And it's Chan Mia 9722. Hello. But I really enjoy medium wave on this radio. It's a very good radio, I must say. It's one of my best radios in terms of medium wave DXing. I really like this radio. Let me see if I can listen to 1540. Okay.
We get the latest earnings from the nation's second largest builder after D.R. Horton. That's Lenore. Whose result.
And then all of a sudden it was 7-3, and then coming out of the half,
He does.
Yeah, it's not that great.
Deep shot hits the pocket.
first halftime adjustment.
Opposite him is Mario Craver, who isn't too
Let me try 1530 out of Cincinnati.
Ashton Bethel Roman
Sounds pretty good.
has really rounded out the trio with his emergence the last 5 or 6 weeks. Mr. Griffin doesn't have a lot of hits
When did I get started? When did you get the radio? Like 2 years ago now.
7.5 yards after the catch.
2 years ago.
Every time they catch the ball. That's a ridiculously impressive.
Actually, when it first came out.
The running back, Ruben Owens,
Before that, they had the Qdosin SR286.
even more magnified.
But I didn't buy that radio. And that radio was already up for a while. Yeah. So then the DX286 came out 2 years ago, and it was at $79. The original SR286 was more expensive. It was $120. But I didn't want to buy it. At that time, I didn't know. And then I heard a lot of things about the radio. I was ready to buy that radio. But then Qdosin remade that radio. Yeah. So Qdosin made that radio. They remade it. They made the menu options more simpler because it was more complicated to use the radio with the SR286. Yeah. So they made a simpler menu, and then they came out with the DX286, and that one was listed at $79. So that's what I got mine. I got mine from Amazon for $79. $79 on Amazon. So the DX286, and very happy with it. But yeah, the original one was the SR286. And that one was more expensive. Yes, more cheaper than $120, yes. So, and I'm very happy with it. I don't know if they're going to come out with a new version. They did tell me a year ago that they were going to, if they come out with a new version, then they might, they're probably going to send me one for testing. But it hasn't happened yet. I don't know what the new version is going to be. So I don't know if it's going to be the DX386 or, yeah. I mean, I don't know how much more they can improve on it other than single sideband, which I don't really care about. I got plenty of radios that do that well. Or if they want to include something like air band, weather band, which I don't really care about either. I mean, this radio is pretty good the way it is right now. So maybe if I had a better speaker, they want to improve on that. Maybe a bigger display. I don't know. But I like that radio. I'm very happy with the radio the way it is. It is, like I said, my best radio for medium wave DXing right now. I really like the radio.
Saving children.
Yeah, it's too noisy for 5 o'clock.
Now is to put a program.
The middle of that, I say amen, but I do
Obviously. So that's how we know who we are.
Yeah, I'm excited for Christmas. I love Christmas.
Aren't you glad about it?
Of course,
That's why
you mentioned shortwave. You know, brother stairs are medium wave.
I'm nearing the end here. Thank you, Lord.
So
Isn't it wonderful that God is doing the work? Absolutely. It's God that's working in you. And what he's doing is
so
do the things that please him. See?
yeah.
That things that please him. And the work against God is not trying to please yourself or do the things that please him.
So when I talk about shortwave, yeah, that's what I hear on shortwave. So of course I'm medium wave. Guess why he's still there?
Hallelujah. That's where he's going to say me. You'll have to say. Hallelujah. You want me to say something? Glory, glory. Oh, thank you, Lord.
All right, let me change this.
That's my giant point. There's another movie that Rob Reiner wrote, produced, and directed. It's also a coming-of-age movie. It's called Flip. Okay. And if you've never seen it, you will appreciate it. That's the movie. That's the movie you can watch with your wife. You know, I mean, it's really like it touches on a lot of different things, and it really is. And it's an ensemble cast. It's got Rebecca G. Mornay, Penelope Ann Miller, Aidan Quinn, and Anthony Edwards. And it's set in, like, I think, early 60s. It's excellent. Anyway, my giant... So, Chris, we're sitting there watching the giant... God, we're watching, you know, Slayton, and there's my man Jalen Hyatt, who should either be running sprints or running as part of a relay team and handing off a baton. Yeah. Right? That's what he should... So, and the game ends, you know, blah, blah, blah. And the late games were, you know, they were decent. And we're sitting there watching, this is Joseph, and this is a case in point. And we're sitting there watching the Broncos. And who's making big plays for the Broncos in that game? Will Jordan Humphrey.
Okay, take care, Kathy Miguel. And you can follow me on my social media. All my links right there. The Nightbot put the link up right there. All my links. .com/Dan1. All my links are there. I have Instagram, TikTok, X, Blue Sky, and all that stuff. If you want to follow me there. And thank you. I hope to see you later. And by the way, I'm right here. I don't know if you're leaving. Where you from? I just want to know where you're from. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.
Big plays for them in a game that meant something. And it was my Joe Shane. It was like my Joe Shane moment. Why I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, I have a tough time getting too hung up on Little John Humphreys. I get your point. He had 3 catches. He did have a touchdown last week, but like, you know.
Yeah. Wait, and it was a play that Slayton or Hyatt, that touchdown pass that he caught, that was a play those guys probably don't make.
Wrong one.
Whether it's route or actually catching the ball. It's just the idea that
he's had 6 catches in 4 games. It's not like, you know.
I forgot to ask you where you're from.
I understand. I'm just saying there's different things. Like Slayton's getting paid money, right? Hyatt's a 3rd-round pick. And honestly, if, you know, you're hung up on the plays needed to be made when they're 2-10, like, I don't care anymore. And Little John Humphreys isn't, and they brought in Hodgins, who's been better than Little John Humphreys.
Right, and I'm not saying, look,
okay.
I'm not saying that guy.
Jesus, man.
That's not my point.
No, I got you.
That's not, you know, that's not able to make.
No, just everybody, let me know where you're from. Where you from?
You know,
of course, I'm here in Yonkers, New York, USA.
You know, like you made the point. The wide receiver debacle, the kicking debacle. I mean, and then this guy is good. going to be
Oh, there goes.
involved somehow.
All done with the
in
washing
moving
machine.
forward.
You can hear it
You have
beeping.
more than like first and second chances. And when you whip on a seventh pick, when you get 2 first-round draft picks,
Yeah.
and you went high draft picks, and you like totally whip, how many years does that set back your organization? I mean,
No, listen, I'm with you. I think you're frustrated, and so you take the little Jordan Humphries thing doesn't bother me all that much. Like that one, I hear what you're saying. Like again, I mean, he pretty much did the same. Like in 3 games with the Giants, he made 4 catches. In 4 games with the Denver Broncos, he's made 6. He's had 8 targets, and he did catch a touchdown last week. But and he's been with the Broncos earlier. He was with the Broncos in 23 and 24. So, I mean, he's familiar with the offense. I just, I can't get too hung up on that. But your overall point about Joe Shane, I agree with you. And the draft picks, I agree with you. Now, look, I mean, but here, like, if I try to play devil's advocate, it's just in my nature as a talk show host. Like, you say something, and I want to point out the flaws in it, even if I agree with you. But Evan Neal, right? Because you said the 7th overall pick. That's Evan Neal, right? That's who you meant. And while, of course, that's on Joe Shane's resume, and you
on Mars. But you know what? I don't know, Mark. I think we have to go up there and take some samples.
let's see what it's saying,
I would
John.
volunteer you to go down with a spacesuit, get some rock samples, and prove one way or the other.
What's the old saying, John? We won't know unless we go.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to use that, George.
It's yours. Take it.
All right. We won't know unless we go. Thank you.
Let's go to John in Florida. John, go ahead.
Hi, George. John.
Hi, John.
Hey, John, I like your name.
Oh, cool. Good to know that. This second live stream that popped up. Nice.
Oh, wow. Very good.
Thank you for telling me that.
I wondered if you had heard of a book that I saw for the first time in 1969 called Spaceship Moon. It talks about how the moon first appeared in the sky and mentioned in many different places around the earth as the moon was, such and such a person was king before the moon was in the sky.
Hello, one more time. Scanning YouTube on my phone before closing my eyes for the night. Night, Danny, radio operators, the AD7LN. All right, take care, and good night, Elmer time.
Space and the Mars base are because of Alternative 3, which is the
Have a good night, Elmer time. Nighty-night.
Solution to global warming, which is the civilization on Mars in case the Earth is destroyed. And it says we have a back-engineered flying saucers that come out of a base in Australia and go through the moon into Mars. And you notice, like, after we put the first couple of guys on the moon, all the space travel to the moon stopped for quite a while.
Yes.
And there's also, when the first satellite went around the moon and came out and started showing the pictures of the backside of the moon, there was a bunch of buildings that appeared in domes on the backside, and they suddenly shut off the feed for TV from that satellite that had been shown.
Yeah. Okay, John, you've asked a number of questions here. Let me first say, based on my best understanding, since we have a pile of moon rocks, we even have...
Teddy Miguel, favorite fruit of banana. I love bananas.
Big rock hits the moon.
Yellow banana. Of course, I like
and they end up in Antarctica.
cooked green banana.
Because they're just lying. You got
So banana, and banana has to be number one.
It's a little rock.
I love
it
banana.
turns out they tested the rocks and they matched the lunar samples.
I was born in Puerto Rico, so I'm Puerto Rican. Tropical. So we have bananas all over the place. Yeah, so banana would be my favorite fruit.
In mainstream science, they have some nice theories.
Second favorite fruit, mango.
We have to go. We won't know unless we go.
Mango.
Back to the moon and ask the right questions.
So banana number one, mango number two.
Us having bases, secret bases on the moon or Mars, that would follow very naturally from us having access to anti-gravity technology from crash saucers or from, the captured German technology from World War II. Remember, the secret to having anti-gravity flight is to have the best way to do it is to have a unified field theory, unifying gravity and electromagnetism. And I work on that. I published on that. And it's called the GEM unification theory. You can look it up on the web under Brandenburg. Brandenburg GEM unification theory. Just, you'll see a whole bunch of hits. So, however, you could understand why the government would be reluctant to say that we had that technology right now, because then everyone would ask, how did you get it? And they don't want to answer that question. So what they're going to do is they're just going to use sheet metal, liquid natural gas, and liquid oxygen to get to Mars. It's perfectly adequate to use liquid fuel rockets to get to Mars. Look at what Elon Musk is doing. He's going to reach Mars just using standard rocket technology. The same technology that allowed us to drop these rovers on Mars that weigh 2 tons, they can land people. So we don't need to disclose all this fancy technology. And yes, it's a little shady to not say that we have bases on Moon and Mars right now, but that's UFO disclosure. If we just want to do Mars disclosure, then, which is very non-threatening to the public, far easier for them to accept.
Indeed it is, John Brandenburg. Keep in touch with us. Have a great Christmas. Up next, Plasma in Space.
But there's only one place you can get the news from Mark Simone, WOR.
Horrific Australia shooting. It was a Muslim terrorist attack using one of those assault rifles, the kind that Schumer and the others yell about. All they do is scream for more gun laws, as if gun laws would prevent shootings.
Mark Simone.
Nobody has tougher gun laws than Chicago, and they have more shootings than any place in America.
Weekdays 10 to noon on 710 WOR. The voice of...
Combine those newsletters with our publication.
Zuma Radio out of Toronto, Canada. Of course, I'm going to get copyright notice, but who cares? I'll mute it later on. Let me put it up, actually. Zuma Radio.
The all-night jukebox on Zoomer Radio, the original greatest hits.
Yo, of course I'm gonna get hit with the copyright notice, but who cares?
Looking at several people that he had a pretty good idea of who he wanted. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
President Trump is doubling down on his comments, blaming the deaths of Hollywood director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle on Trump derangement syndrome.
I think he hurt himself in career-wise, so he became like a deranged person, Trump derangement syndrome. So I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all in any way.
Oh my God.
I thought he was very bad for our country.
In a Truth Social post this morning, Trump said Reiner's death was reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction.
Well, I'm not laughing at the death. It's just this comment is funny.
Says it has thwarted a New Year's Eve
Well, I don't.
Scott Carr reports.
I'm not. Oh my God! I'm not laughing at the death. It's just that this guy is just too much with the comments. Oh my God!
Explosive devices. The 4 suspects have been charged with conspiracy and possession of a destructive device.
What are you gonna do?
FBI agents say that a member of the same group was arrested in New Orleans for allegedly plotting a separate.
Liberals are going crazy today.
The Jewish community across the tri-state was on edge after 2.
Although when Charlie Kirk got killed, they were all celebrating. You know, what are you gonna do?
The NYPD has beefed up its presence around Jewish institutions after those 2 men killed 15 during a Hanukkah celebration in Australia on Sunday. Last night, there were a lot of cops watching a huge outdoor menorah be lit in Midtown.
It's warmed the heart to see so many people that came by, not afraid, no nothing, to show that we're still here, we light the candles and we celebrate.
The NYPD says right now there are no specific threats against the Jewish community. Noam Layton, WABC News.
UPS is being accused of failing to deliver the proper pay to thousands of seasonal workers all across New York State. Lisa G. has the story.
Attorney General Letitia James is announcing a lawsuit over accusations the company failed to record all hours worked and required widespread off-the-clock labor.
This blatant wage theft allowed UPS to save millions of dollars while seasonal workers struggled to support their families.
James says the state investigation dating back 6 years resulted in upwards of $45 million owed to seasonal delivery workers, and she's seeking restitution. Lisa G, 77 WABC.
Lisa G, you're not cutting it.
New Jersey residents are being...
I'm going to put the BBC. Let me put the BBC.
New Jersey Congressman Josh Democratic Republic of Congo says it's agreed to withdraw
BBC from
request of the United States.
BBC World Service.
Had seized the strategic city in the east of the country last week, days after the Congolese and Rwandan governments had signed a peace deal in Washington. The European Union is presenting its first ever plan to address the continent's housing crisis on Tuesday. It's expected to try to boost construction and regulate short-term holiday lets. Data suggests house prices have soared by 60% in 15 years, and nearly 1.3 million people across the bloc are homeless. Britain and South Korea have finalized a trade deal. 98% of goods and services traded between the two countries will continue to be free of tariffs. Simon Jack reports.
South Korea is the UK's 25th largest trading partner. Britain had previously benefited from a deal struck when it was a member of the EU, the terms of which were extended but were due to expire at the end of this year. The government said the new deal was an improvement, claiming it will boost service exports to South Korea. It's the latest in a series of post-Brexit trade deals struck by the government following agreements with India, the EU and the US. But the independent budget forecast of the OBR has so far deemed deals done with those larger partners as unlikely to make a measurable impact on the UK economy by 2030.
There's been dramatic scenes in Mexico City's local legislative chamber when a group of legislators started brawling on the main podium. During a debate, a group of politicians from the opposition National Action Party got up onto the podium to protest against the main governing Morena party. Video showed a struggle as attempts were made to remove them, with women from both parties pulling each other's hair and pushing and elbowing each other. That's the latest world news from the BBC.
Hello and welcome to the Arts House and the BBC World Service. I'm Nikki Baby, bringing you a star-studded lineup of guests and some cultural companionship with the best global arts and culture conversation from across the BBC and beyond. On this week's show, Australian actor Joel Edgerton on being at one with nature whilst filming Train Dream. India-born British-American author Salman Rushdie talks about writing for comfort and catharsis. And Hollywood actor Sydney Sweeney reveals how she transformed herself to play real-life boxer Christy Martin in the movie Christy. That's not all, though. I'll be talking to Chinese-American director Bing Liu about his first narrative film, Preparation for the Next Life, later in the show. And we welcome back as our cultural critic Guy Lodge. So, Guy, before we go any further, do you have a cultural highlight that you want to recommend to the world?
I do, actually. I was recently in Amsterdam for the documentary festival, but while I was there, I got to check out an exhibition that's currently there at the I Film Centre there, that's dedicated to Tilda Swinton, obviously, you know, the great British actress, and it's called Tilda Swinton Ongoing. And it's a very inventive tribute to her kind of career that she's curated herself in collaboration with a lot of the filmmakers that she's worked with over the years. There's a display by Luca Guadagnino and a display by Joanna Hogg and a section dedicated to her kind of collaboration with the late Derek Jarman.
Yeah.
And it mixes kind of fashion and video and sculpture, and it's really creative and really fun. And I hear from the publicist at the Eye that it's going to be touring internationally next year, so
people can see that somewhere else in the world.
Get to see it in their country soon.
Thank you, Guy. First then, Train Dreams, the film adapted from the best-selling epic novella by the American writer Dennis Johnson, has been heaped with praise since it screened at the Sundance Film Festival earlier this year. I loved it. It centres on the mostly itinerant, grueling life of a railroad owner in the early 20th century, a solitary, thoughtful soul called Robert Granier, who toils in the Pacific Northwest to clear a path for the Great American Railway. Directed beautifully by Clint Bentley, Granier is played by the Australian actor and filmmaker Joel Edgerton. He's shocked by the racism and violence of others in the logging crews and is conflicted about the destruction of the beautiful landscape. For me, the centre of the film is a great and painful and enduring love story. The BBC's Kirsty Walk asked Joel Edgerton about his character.
I had often said that when I look at characters who are heroes or protagonists, that I'm trying to make sure they're not too morally perfect. But with Robert, I almost didn't want to mess with the purity of who he is, because I think...
hello, Kathy Miguel.
It feels real, and yet there's something allegorical as well about man that's good, that doesn't presume to control the world, and even though he's there harvesting the climate.
How long have you been hearing
there's no
this?
intention for him in that.
Right, I just put it on about a few minutes ago.
On the table for his family.
BBC World Service.
Be with his family.
I get it here on local NPR station 820.
And this was about me
WNYC. So I just it's about a few minutes since I have it on.
And not presume.
Over here, the BBC World Service on this WNYC goes from midnight to 6 a.m.
Person that we wish there were more of.
Local time.
And you realise, and I think this resonates for all of us, we often, like Robert Frost's poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, I think it's called, or something, I'm paraphrasing. This idea that we feel like everything in the world and all its events and all people relate to us in some way, that we have some bearing on the world, and while Robert doesn't believe he has...
Well, I'm not watching, I'm streaming, so...
...steering wheel of his life, that he is aware that he can cause damage, and that he wears the sensitivity of that quite strongly.
He sees terrible things and he suffers terrible loss. He is the emotional heart of the book. And I thought one of the most moving things was almost the magic realism of the idea that his wife and daughter come to him as if they're spirits.
I hear them sometimes. Out there in the woods. talking and laughing. Yeah. I don't even want to turn my head because I'm afraid that I'll scare them away. So just listen until they fade away somewhere else. Whether we're religious or not, whether we believe ourselves to be spiritual or not, I believe we all have conversations with ourselves and the past, that we all imagine things that are outside the realms of the practical realities that surround us, that we go to funerals and feel like a bird on the top of a church steeple might be embodying the spirit of a message or something. We look for messages in nature, and we all harbour these sort of almost paganistic connections with the earth, even though we often forget that we're part of the earth, that we belong to it.
I want to ask you, was it physically a tough process for you? You know, there's fire, there's biblical rain. Even the act of sawing can't have been that easy. I mean, obviously you're a lot more creature comforts, but was it actually quite a grueling thing to shoot? And where did you shoot it?
We shot up in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I meant how.
Mainly, and Seattle in the forest.
I meant to say how long have you been hearing this? Well, the live stream is 56 minutes long right now. So ever since I started the live stream, I've been listening to my radio. Anyway, take care. Bye-bye.
And things like that. So
Kathy,
lying around in the
Miguel,
mud, being rained on.
have a good day. Good evening. Well, good day now.
Cabin to me is like, I'll
Take
do
care.
that all day long. And it, like you pointed
Thank you for stopping by.
Chop wood, and
Stop by whenever you want, and
but I like
and subscribe. Thank you.
Aspects of this movie, and to me, the biggest work is more about the interior life and the emotional aspect of things. You know, that's the bigger concern for me than whether or not I can chop down a tree.
But also being in Spokane and being near Seattle, you're probably quite near to what America looked like all those years ago. You didn't presumably have to, you know, get rid of electricity poles and pylons and the editor or anything. Some of this area is actually incredibly elemental.
Yeah, around that part of the world, you could travel 15 minutes, 20 minutes out of the city and feel like you've traveled back in time. A lot of the big old trees have all gone. They still exist in pockets. And certainly in this protected forest that we went into, there was a tree that had fallen down. There's a scene where a bunch of us are sitting down having a cup of tea, and this guy gets up, he says, isn't there a place in this world where a man could get some peace? You know, and he storms off. The tree that's behind us is you know, I don't know how many hundreds of years old, and it just fallen down a few weeks earlier. And the thing is, the trunk laying down is the height of a small house. And to think that the whole wilderness there was full of that stuff, and it's all gone, you know. It's like stepping back, you know, prehistoric time.
Actor Joel Edgerton on his latest film, Train Dreams. Our cultural critic for this edition of The Arts Hour is Guy Lodge. Guy, when I was introducing that little bit of audio, you were nodding when I said I loved it. Did you love it then?
I love it too. I think it's really an exquisite film. I saw it back in January, actually. I wasn't at Sundance, but I had a remote accreditation, so I first saw it on a screener digitally, kind of on my TV at home. Then a few months later, I got to see it in a cinema again, and it just, the full impact of it.
It's exquisite, isn't it?
I mean, I think a lot of people have compared it to the work of the veteran American director Terrence Malick.
I can see why.
In his way, it's very kind of in touch with nature and the environment and the kind of sensory world, but it's also just so humane and tender and devastatingly moving, but hopeful as well.
Joel Edgerton was a revelation for me in this film.
I think it might be his best work, actually. I've always liked him as an actor. He's a very kind of stoic interior presence, and he's not, you know, he tends not to be a very kind of demonstrative or expressive performance. I think this is the perfect kind of role for him, a man who kind of keeps all his feeling and all his pain on the inside until it gradually kind of bit by bit sort of breaks out of him. And yeah, I think he's wonderful and just so affecting in it. I really hope he gets some awards attention for it.
I do too. And what stayed with you from the film, out of interest?
I have to say, I mean, especially given that I first saw it nearly a year ago, I mean, just so much of the the images from the film, the imagery, just the light of it and the kind of color palette and the environment. I think back to it and I feel like I'm back in a certain place and time. And as much as I love the story and the character, whatever, I mostly think of it as an immersion into an environment and in a kind of America that I think has either gone or disappearing.
Yeah, I cried. And you can too if you decide to watch it, because it's now on Netflix. Guys, thank you. You're listening to The Arts Hour from the BBC World Service. I'm Nikki Beattie. American actor Sydney Sweeney has already earned Emmy nominations for her roles in the teen drama Euphoria and the series The White Lotus. This year, she's also been at the centre of an overheated social media storm over a jeans advert. She starred in it, and it was a pun about a blonde star having great genes. The campaign has been variously accused of flirting with eugenics and nodding to white supremacy. Sydney Sweeney's latest film, Christy, sees her transformed physically to play the real-life boxer Christy Martin, who helped establish women's boxing in the American mainstream back in the 1980s. Christy had to hide the fact that she was a gay woman and then survived terrible domestic violence from her husband, who was also her trainer. Like Margot Robbie's I, Tonya, about the controversial career of the real-life ice skater, Tonya Harding, Christy was a passion project for its star and a kind of period drama, a reminder of a time not so long ago when the media spotlight could be particularly cruel to female sports stars. The BBC's Samira Ahmed asked Sydney Sweeney about working with the real-life Christy on the film.
I got to meet her while I was in prep, and so she came to my trainings, and we sparred a few times. She'd work with me with technique, and then just being able to have her to ask questions and be by my side, and she'd be on set, and just having her energy and her essence around us was such a treat. It was amazing.
Must have been amazing and quite emotional for her watching you enact all these scenes from her life.
You know, it was really interesting. It's one of those things where I think everyone felt the weight of it all. The first week of filming was the week in the house, so it was the very end of the film, the last like 25 minutes of the film. And we wanted to make sure that we held a lot of care for Christy during that time. So we were like, hey, maybe during these scenes it might not be the best for you to be around. And then on that following Monday, it was one of the first days in the gym, and we had Christy come. And so the entire crew went completely silent when she walked in. And then it was like a 10-15 minute applause, and people were crying just because we went through the week of seeing what she went through and then seeing her now.
The murder attempt.
Yeah, and it was just one of the most moving experiences that I've ever witnessed. And then everyone just wanted her there all the time.
Hello, Marty Thompson, UH12S from New Zealand, and welcome to the live stream, and thank you for stopping by.
I trained in MMA and grappling when I was 12, and I did it from like 12 until I was 19 years old.
Good luck getting knocked out. People still talk about Robert De Niro's weight gain for Raging Bull. I think people are talking about your physical transformation. How did you go about it? Because you're very much there in the body of that.
Thank you. I had about 3 months to prepare, and I worked with a weight trainer and a boxing coach, and they worked with me on nutrition, training. I worked with them every single day, morning and night, and I put on 35 pounds.
How did you move? Because it seems that you just like punch someone out really fast. It's 0 to 100.
It is.
What was that like playing her?
Well, what's interesting is because it's such a long span of time. So she's going to move differently from when she first started versus towards the end of the film, because when she's older, her body is sore, she's had injuries. So it was kind of navigating the way that she was going to start and how her body was going to age and how physically and mentally draining it was as she went on.
The fighting is incredibly realistic, and I find it very compelling to watch, and I don't often like to watch boxing. And Christy was famous for knocking her opponents out. How real was the contact, and did you get hurt?
It was very real. One of my big things, because I came from a combat background, I was like, I want to fight. And I know that it's a little complicated and tricky when you're doing a movie and it's not real, but... Insurance. But
One of my least favorite things in films is when you have these choppy fight scenes because they're having to edit around the fake hits and they're putting in stunt doubles and it just feels not connected. And so much of Christy's story is happening within the ring. Like, so much of her emotional outlet is in these fights. And she comes to life during these fights. And I was like, I don't want to have to cut away. I don't want you to be on the back of my head. And every single girl that I fought, we would talk immensely, and they were so game, and they were the strongest, most incredible women I've ever worked with.
You got a block wound from the actress playing Layla Ali.
Yeah, I had concussion. And so we actually hit each other. Like, we were full-blown, like, making contact. There were some broken noses. And
were you choreographing those fights, or were you just kind of playing them real?
No, so every single fight in the movie is the actual fights from Christy's real life. So, like, the combinations in the Layla Ali fight are the exact same combinations in her real Layla Ali fight. So it was not only having to retrain my brain on how to box versus, because I came from kickboxing, it was also then learning how she moved and how she fought, and then also memorizing those exact combinations.
Actor Sydney Sweeney on playing the title role in the film Christy. Our cultural critic this week is Guy Lodge. What did you think of the film, Guy?
I mean, in one sense, it's quite a familiar kind of boxing biopic, and we've seen a lot of those before, and we kind of know the beats of that kind of underdog story. But it's unusual still to have one centered around a female boxer. That's still quite a niche, and so I was compelled by it for that reason, and especially because of Sydney Sweeney's performance, which she really does go all in. I mean, not just on the physicality, though it is a remarkable transformation, but yeah, I got a sense of real kind of emotional investment in this character who's trying to defeat so many kind of prejudices and biases against her. And even though obviously Sydney Sweeney is at a very different point in her career from Christy the boxer, I could sense a certain identification between kind of her and the character, because I think she's used to being underestimated.
Apart from the fact that she physically transforms, bulks up, and she's got a very unattractive 80s brown brunette perm at the beginning, I remember those, she also wears brown contact lenses. That was really striking for me for some reason. I'm sure loads of actors wear coloured contact lenses, but there was something about them.
It really does kind of change her entire kind of appearance and aspect, because and we think of Sydney Sweeney as the kind of ultimate all-American blonde, blue-eyed girl next door. Yeah. And I think it's a real tool as an actor to have something like, whether it's contact lens or wig, or that removes that perception people have of you, and you can kind of start from scratch again in a way.
Yeah. So if this film is a great example of transformation and her committing to a real-life person's story, how do you think it sits alongside her previous work? How would you describe it for somebody looking to see a Sydney Sweeney film?
I mean, we've already seen that she can really act. I mean, obviously she became known for her roles in TV, as you said, in Euphoria and The White Lotus, which were much more kind of playing to type. But we saw her a couple of years ago in a small indie film called Reality.
Wow, that film is worth seeing, by the way.
Yeah, kind of based on the real-life Reality Winner story, which is, you know, if you don't know about it, look it up, because it's
Reality Winner is the name of the person, by the way.
Exactly.
It's not a reality winner.
It does sound like it shouldn't be a real name, but yeah, and she was really good in that film, and I think, and again, really kind of gritty and invested and convincing. So it wasn't a surprise to me that she could dig that deep, but I just didn't know she had that kind of physicality in her.
When it started, I was thinking, oh, is this going to be a little bit like $1 Million Baby, that old film with Hilary Swank? And actually, they reference that film within Christy, don't they? But how does it compare to other boxing films for you? Same tropes?
A lot of the same tropes, and it's not particularly inventive. I think the filmmaking is kind of more workmanlike than inspired. But yeah, so it's resting on her performance mostly.
And Guy, I can't have one of the UK's and the world's foremost film critics sitting in a studio towards the end of the year without asking you, are there a couple of films that you can think of that you would recommend to someone listening to just seek out and watch?
Absolutely. I mean, it is listing season. I've had to sort of compile my top 10 films for so many different kind of publications or whatever. But the one that comes up for me again and again is the Spanish film Sirat by the filmmaker Oliver Lash, I think it's pronounced, and it's just a mind-blowing film. I think it's only coming out in the UK like in February next year, but it's out in a lot of the world.
You talked about this film earlier this year.
Did I? Yeah.
Told you at that point, I cannot wait to see it. I've got it to see this weekend.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of good films this year, but this was the one to me that felt like it was speaking a new kind of visual and oral language.
Can you give us a clue as to why it was a new visual and oral language?
I will say, it's one way it's best going in as kind of blind as possible.
Okay.
But the essential premise is that it's a father and his son searching for his daughter/sister in the son's case in the Moroccan desert through the kind of rave scene. So already a very kind of unusual environment, very kind of elemental stakes. But then the rules of the storytelling just keep shifting, and the narrative peaks in the most unexpected places and then keeps climaxing over and over again, and it's just such a ride.
So if that kept coming up, was there anything else that kept coming up too?
Yes, a few ones. The Mastermind, Kelly Reichardt.
Did you love
wonderful
that?
film. I really did. It's a heist movie, which is not what we expect from Kelly Reichardt, because she's very known for her very, very small, quiet, intimate kind of American indies. But it's a heist film very much on her kind of relaxed terms, and it's got Josh O'Connor, who's obviously had a huge year. He's been in absolutely everything, it seems.
He's brilliant in this.
I think it's his best performance of all the things he's been in this year. As a kind of American family man in the 1970s, a very kind of suburban dad, quite sort of ordinary, schlubby life, who kind of harbors this dream of being a criminal, and pulls off this heist at the local art museum. And obviously it all goes pear-shaped in all the ways that these things do.
Yes.
But the film is still really unpredictable in its way, and keeps moving to this strange kind of jazzy rhythm, as does the wonderful score.
Oh, yes.
Gorgeous kind of free jazz score throughout by, I think, an American cornet player called Rob Mazurek, which is absolutely, I'm waiting for them to put that out on vinyl because I need it in my life.
Oh, excellent. In fact, we interviewed Kelly Reichardt for that film for the London Film Festival earlier this year, and that's one of the things I remarked on was the music. She's a huge fan of his. Bring it out on vinyl for Guy Lodge, please.
My Christmas present.
Thank you, Guy. That's it for part one of the show, but don't go away. Still to come, author Salman Rushdie, music from Afghanistan, and I'll be talking to filmmaker Bing Liu about his preparation for the next life. The Art Hour's back after this.
Distribution of the BBC World Service in the United States is made possible by American Public Media, producer and distributor of award-winning public radio content, engaging audiences, creating meaningful experiences, and fostering conversations. APM, American Public Media, with support from Odoo, offering software that provides building blocks for creating a custom software suite. Odoo, what small businesses need.
On the next Brian Lehrer Show, New York City now has an environmental justice report, literally showing who's being polluted more than other people. We can see what it finds for your neighborhood and what to do about it. Also, our latest Shop Listener call-in, as we support those of you selling holiday gifts. This week's Shop Listener will be for any of you selling holiday gifts for kids. The Brian Lehrer Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
Still to come on the Arts Hour with me, Nikki Baby. I'll be talking to Oscar-nominated Chinese-American director Bing Liu about his film's preparation for the next life. And we'll hear from the world's most famous living novelist, Salman Rushdie.
I think the thing that rescued me, actually, was work. I thought the only thing I can do is to go on being the writer that I'd always set out to be. You know?
All that and more coming up on the Arts Hour. BBC News with Emily Thomas. Officials in the Philippines say the two men who carried out the deadly mass shooting at Bondi Beach in Australia spent most of November in their country. The Philippine Armed Forces said it could not confirm reports that the attackers received military-style training there. President Trump has filed a $5 billion defamation lawsuit against the BBC in a Florida court.
It concerns a documentary that spliced together two parts of a speech he gave on the 6th of January 2021. The US military says it's carried out strikes on 3 alleged drug smuggling boats in the eastern Pacific Ocean, killing 8 people. It did not provide any proof that the boats were engaged in drug trafficking. The M23 rebel group that's fighting government forces in the Democratic Republic of Congo said it's agreed to withdraw from the city of Uvira at the request of the United States. The Rwandan-backed militia had seized the city last week. A BBC investigation has uncovered an international scam network exploiting children with cancer in fraudulent fundraising campaigns. Parents say their children were filmed in distressing circumstances, but that they received none of the money donated. The European Union is presenting its first ever plan to address the continent's housing crisis shortly. It's expected to try to boost construction and regulate short-term holiday lets. Britain and South Korea have finalized a trade deal. It replicates the same terms as South Korea's existing agreement with the European Union that Britain used to be part of. There's been dramatic scenes in Mexico City's legislative chamber when a group of politicians started brawling on the main podium with cameras broadcasting the fight live. Video showed a struggle as attempts were made to remove them, with women pushing and elbowing each other. That's the world news from the BBC.
Welcome back to the Arts House and the BBC World Service with me, Nikki Davies. So far on the programme, we've heard from Australian actor Joel Edgerton about his latest film, The Elegiac Train Dreams. And Hollywood star Sydney Sweeney discussed transforming herself physically to play the boxer Christy Martin. Coming up, I'll be talking to Oscar-nominated Chinese-American director Bing Liu about his film Preparation for the Next Life. First, though, the world's most famous living novelist. Indian-born author Salman Rushdie has published more than 20 books, and his many awards include a British knighthood for his services to literature. His breakthrough 1981 novel Midnight's Children won the UK's prestigious Booker Prize and catapulted him to international fame. It follows a young man who, like Salman Rushdie, was born in Bombay in 1947, on the cusp of India's independence. It was in 1989, following the publication of his now notorious novel The Satanic Verses, that his life took on the epic proportions of one of his stories. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, declared a fatwa, an order to kill its author and anyone involved in its publication. Riots and a series of horrifying attacks followed. The book's Japanese translator was murdered, and Salman was forced into hiding for many years. He kept writing, though, and defending his and other authors' freedom to publish. He moved to America and got on with his life. Then in 2022, he was attacked on stage in New York, stabbed multiple times, but defied the odds to survive. Again, he returned to his desk, writing about the attack and his recovery in a best-selling memoir, Knife. The BBC's Lauren Laverne asked him how he felt after being in hiding for nearly a decade.
You know, you feel like, what, I'm hiding behind the sofa? That's not a very heroic thing to do, is it? And I think the thing that rescued me, actually, was work. I thought the only thing I can do is to go on being the writer that I'd always set out to be, you know.
And you actually wrote an incredibly optimistic book. That was your next star book.
I had promised my son Zafar that I would write a book that he would enjoy reading. And I think in general, even if there's no crisis in your life, if you make a promise to a child, you should probably keep it. And so I wrote Haroun in the Sea of Stories. And yes, it's a very optimistic book. I think maybe I needed to feel optimistic myself. And I have to say, the book written in maybe the darkest moments of my life has been one of the most joyful experiences in terms of its life in the world. You know, people kind of love it.
So, Salman, the Iranian government distanced itself from the fatwa in 1998, but it has never been rescinded. Tell me about you and your family beginning to pick up your lives once you came out of hiding.
Well, I just thought, enough. Also, I thought, if you wait for somebody to say to you, everything's fine now, that day will never come. So in the end, you have to make the choice yourself. Well, it wasn't only me. It was also that the authorities' analysis of the level of threat, it dropped dramatically after the agreement with the Iranians at the United Nations. And there was a point after that where they said it's now reached the level at which we wouldn't normally offer full-time protection. I said, okay, well, let's stop. And I said, what do we do now? And they got up and shook hands and walked out of the room.
That must have been so weird.
Like that. I got in the car, drove off. I knew I had to go somewhere, and I thought, oh, I better get a taxi.
I mean...
And I hadn't got a taxi in 8.5 years.
And what was it like being out in the world again?
Well, what was interesting was how quickly I adjusted back. It's as if human beings' desire for normality is so great that when you get it, you just go for it in a big way.
Oh, it must have been wonderful. I mean,
it was just to stand out on the street with your arm out, hailing a cab. Go for a walk. You want to go for a walk. You're hungry, go to a supermarket.
And what about managing your re-entry into public life? How was that?
Well, I wasn't very bothered about that, really. I was more interested in regaining ordinary life, living somewhere, seeing friends and family, writing books. There's all this nonsense about me being some kind of party animal. And actually, I'm really the opposite of that.
But there was an element of, I think when you moved to New York in 2000, certainly an element of just demonstrating that you were living your life comfortably.
Well, that I had to do because I was worried that people would, because of everything that had happened and all the reporting of it and the danger levels and etc., that people would be scared to be around me. And I thought the only way I could show them that they don't need to be scared is to behave in a way where I'm not scared. And if they see, well, oh, he's walking around taking the subway, oh, it's all right then.
Then they relax, they take that cue from you.
Yeah, and that worked. And that allowed me to have an ordinary life.
And in terms of your own feelings, to what extent were you fearful? Were you scared?
Well, I thought that, we have to be careful, but I felt that the story had moved on. I mean, I had some degree of contact with American security forces. They're obviously listening to all kinds of noises of groups that they monitor. So, and they said nobody seems interested. And for 20 years, more than 20 years, nobody was interested.
Salman Rushdie, on August the 12th, 2022, you stepped out on stage at the Chautauqua Institution in upstate New York. Ironically, you'd been invited there to talk about keeping writers safe from harm. Then a man jumped out of the audience and started running towards you. Do you remember what was going through your mind when you saw him?
Well, I mean, I only just saw him before he got to me. And I just thought, why now? So it was just shocking. I thought, really? I mean, this is 3 decades later. And this kid was very young, wasn't even born at the time that the Satanic Verses came out and so on.
I hadn't even read it.
Hadn't read it, and as we discovered afterwards. I mean, he said himself in an interview that he'd read a couple of pages of something I'd written and he'd seen me on YouTube.
You've testified at the trial, but not met him, I don't think.
I don't think he'd open his heart to me, somehow. I tried in my memoir that I wrote, Knife, to get inside his head. I had this sort of imaginary dialogue with him, and I tried to understand what he might have been motivated by. And I thought if I actually ever got into a conversation with my attacker, I'd get some nonsense, which would not actually help very much.
Do you need an answer?
No, I don't. I mean, I think I've got what I need. By writing the memoir, by the time I'd finished it, I thought, okay, I'm kind of done with this subject.
You mentioned your wife Eliza, also a writer, and she's written about the traumatic moment when she heard what had happened and getting to you, and reading her account I found very powerful, because often I think the people who are supporting someone going through something traumatic, they get forgotten.
Oh yeah, and the trauma is not only experienced by the injured person. I mean, it's loved ones and family and etc. That's traumatic for all concerned. You've had to all work with the trauma and the PTSD and so on. And I think we mostly got there.
Has it changed you? Has it changed your relationship?
I think what happens is when you have a lucky escape like this, is that you begin to value everything more. You begin to value the days more, and you begin to value love and your work and everything. It suddenly just puts into enormous relief the important things in life. and makes you understand that there are many things in life which are not important and that you can do without. And you focus on the things that are most important.
Author Salman Rushdie, our cultural critic for this edition of the Arts Hour, is Guy Lodge. Guy, Salman talked about taking solace in the creative process of writing. Are there any standout examples for you of books or films or pieces of art that have been created in crisis or catharsis?
Well, there is actually an Iranian example, the filmmaker Jafar Panahi, who just won the Palme d'Or this year at the Cannes Film Festival for his newest film. It was just an accident, but for several years he was under house arrest in Iran, kind of having been accused by the government of creating anti-government propaganda with his films. And in that period, he continued to make films, from his own home, including one called This Is Not a Film, which very much was one, and was very resourceful and witty and powerful about speaking truth to power. And since then, he's been freed, but he continues to very much kind of protest against the system, and he's recently been arrested again by the government. So it's been a real kind of back and forth with him, but he just continues to create art, whatever the circumstance.
And am I right that it was just an accident, was filmed secretly?
Yeah. Even when he's been able to kind of be out and about, he still has to film very much covertly.
But yeah, that's a great example of somebody creating under crisis. You are also a writer. What does writing do to you in a time of crisis and catharsis? Can you write when you're in a state like that?
I mean, I do find writing can kind of get you out of a particular dark place, or or when you're in some kind of form of emotional crisis as well. When my father died 2 years ago, I found writing was one thing I could still do, actually. I mean, other activities were very sort of hard, and socializing was kind of a lot of pressure and very exhausting, but just kind of sitting by myself and being creative and sort of being alone with my ideas, that was manageable. So I can, it's obviously a very different situation, a very different stakes, but I can relate in a way.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. You're listening to the Arts Hour from the BBC World Service. Filmmaker Bing Lu was born in China and raised in the United States, and in his early career, he worked as a cinematographer and camera assistant. He first came to the world's attention with his 2018 documentary, Minding the Gap. The film was Oscar-nominated in the Best Documentary Feature category and won the Special Jury Award for Breakthrough Filmmaking at the Sundance Film Festival. His latest film is a narrative feature called Preparation for the Next Life. Based on the novel by Atticus Lish and adapted for the screen by playwright Martina Marjok, the film is a gritty yet tender drama about love, survival, and the immigrant experience in New York City. The story centers on Aisha, an undocumented Uyghur immigrant played superbly by Sebia Betia, who arrives in New York and survives by working in underground kitchens in Chinatown. She meets Skinner, played by Fred Hetchinger, a young American soldier recently returned from multiple Middle East tours, haunted by trauma and searching for stability. They fall in love, but their bond is tested. And Bing Lu joins us now on the Arts Hour. Bing, the Oscar-winning filmmaker Barry Jenkins was apparently instrumental in the making of this film. How so?
I met him at a film festival. He was a jury member when I was touring with my documentary, Minding the Gap, and he just really took a chance on me and said, hey, you should try to do narrative. And he sent me a book, Preparation for the Next Life. I read it. I really responded to it, and we were off to the races.
And what was it about this story that spoke to you so deeply?
I wanted to make a film that really honored my mom and the journey that she went on coming to the States and trying to get a foothold in this country. And I saw a lot of crossover between the protagonist of Preparation for the Next Life and the novel that Atticus Lish wrote and my mom's story. My mom also worked in a lot of Chinese restaurants, And she also struggled to find her community and their sense of belonging in this country. Even today, I'm not sure if she really found it, and I think I wanted to honor that part of her journey.
So I've heard you talk before and say that you and your family were undocumented for a while, like Aisha is in the film. How did that inform the way you told her story?
It's interesting. I was a little kid when that part of my mom and I's story happened, and only in hindsight did I realize that she had to make some very momentous and consequential choices in her life to try to get us status in the States. You know, one of those choices was choosing whether or not to marry a man that could provide us a pathway to legal status in this country. And she chose to marry that man, and he had his own demons that I learned about. And I think that, you know, a lot of undocumented folks get put in this really difficult place where that relationship can become strained, and then it puts extra pressure on them to make sense of what do they really value and care about. And, you know, for my mom, it's not like that there wasn't love in that relationship that she was with, but there was just this added kind of legal issue that she had to deal with, and that sometimes made her maybe stay in the relationship longer than she might have otherwise.
And so, what was the most important thing? Because obviously this film explores undocumented life, trauma, love in the shadows of a city. What was the most important thing for you to illuminate through Aisha and Skinner's relationship?
There's a sense, I think, of some of the people that I knew growing up in my Rust Belt hometown of Rockford, Illinois, of people trying to make romantic relationships work when they haven't really had the best examples of that. And these are people who often are unsure of the reasons for why they're on this earth in the first place. And so with all those realities in their lives, I wanted to try to look at, you know, what happens in the crucible of a relationship that maybe can provide some answers for people who are looking for meaning in their lives and looking to find a way to navigate a relationship of love that they have never really, you know, that they're doing for the first time.
Sebia Betia, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who plays Aisha. This is her debut performance. I mean, I find that really hard to believe. How did you find her, Bing?
We got really lucky. We had a great casting director, Jen Venditti, and she did her magic, and she found to be by happenstance. I think somebody